Okay. Wait, so I can start?
Yep.
All right, so I had this like really short quote, and it said, "You make me feel uncivilized, Daisy." And I was like reading this, and I felt like it was kind of unfortunate that I'm pretty sure Tom said it. That Tom said that to Daisy because the reason that he said it is because he's so rich and she was poor. She acts poor because she's from Alabama, and it's like he can't say that to her when he's like cheating on her, and I felt like that was kind of ironic.
Yeah, I agree with that, because when he was saying that, like, that part I really agree with, because he's kind of talking about, like, one of the quotes I had earlier was, "I've got a nice place here," which he's kind of, like, reflecting on what he has and how he's happy with himself, and how Daisy's, like, not happy with him, and they're kind of, like, in an argument right now, and he's kind of a little self-centered, like, about himself, and that I think that him saying what you just brought up is kind of, like you said, ironic, because he's kind of like higher up and has like a lot of money and stuff, and she's considered poor, so I agree with that.
Yeah, but I don't think Tom is necessarily satisfied with where he is, because on page 6, the narrator says, "But I felt that Tom would drift on forever, seeking a little wistfully for the dramatic turbulence of some irrevocable football game," and that kind of just shows that like he doesn't think that Tom will ever be like completely satisfied with where he is, even though he has almost anything that you could ever want. And yeah.
I feel like part of the reason why Tom says the things that he says to Daisy is because, I guess, like, yeah, your point, he's not satisfied with himself. So I feel like he feels the need to bring her down with him because he's not satisfied.
It also kind of shows how they viewed women in that time period.
Yeah. I actually kind of forgot about that.
I feel like throughout the book, he's always kind of been like stern with her. Like, in the end, he was like, he said something and he was like, "Tom demanded suddenly," and it was just kind of like he always like has this kind of like tone with her that's kind of like, "I'm through with you" kind of thing.
Right. And then in the movie when we watch, wait, Mr. Fry, we're allowed to bring in the movie, like with the.
I mean, if you want to rope it out, I mean, we won't fully be watching it until
Okay.
next week, but if you want to drop a reference, sure.
Okay, so like in the movie, he was like, we watched how he interacted with her, but part of it is because she was like drinking a lot and like going out and doing things with other people, and I feel like he has, I mean, he like feels the need to be stern with her, I guess, in kind of a way. But I don't know if that's just in the movie's tone.
Logan, do you have a point you want to share?
Well, the only thing I was really thinking is, I think we have to wait a little while before we make any like judgments on either of them, because one of them could be more corrupt than we know now. Like, even though we can paint Tom as the bad guy now, I think we have to wait till we completely understand his position on Daisy until we fully pick who's the bad guy in the situation.
One of the things that like kind of reflects how Daisy kind of feels, on page 17, she says, "You see, I think everything's terrible anyhow." And this is when she was talking about like her child being born and the girl she had, and how it was just her there and like Tom wasn't there. And like before that she said, "I hope she'll be a fool, because that's the best thing a girl can be in the world." And that's kind of showing that her like idea in the world and her worldview is kind of like been like distraught because of Tom, and it's not a good one, because she's saying that everything is terrible and that she wants her daughter to be a fool, which obviously is not what you want. And she doesn't have like an uplifting like view on the world, and doesn't think of like things that are good and try and like make her life better. She just kind of goes along the path that she's been given and just keeps going like down, and kind of making it harder for herself by doing that, instead of trying to fix whatever she thinks is terrible and like fix what she wants and do it that way.
Tom's view on life isn't that positive either. Like on page 12, he says, "Civilization's going to pieces. I've gotten to be a terrible pessimist about things." And then, like, I don't know, that could be a reason that he's like, isn't he like cheating on Daisy or whatever? That could be a reason. Like, they're both like pessimistic, so they could be clashing. I don't know. Just, they both have pessimistic outlooks on life.
Yeah, I agree with that, 'cause especially like Tom does have everything he wants, and even like, not just in the book and everything, that a lot of people who are like super rich and have like everything that they want, they tend to like go down a different path or go down some path that leads them to do like one mistake. And you think that Tom in this book, like Tom's has basically everything he wants and can't have everything he wants, and like what John said, that he's still searching for something, and that kind of led him to, I guess, cheat on Daisy, because he thought that that was what he was searching for, but he obviously still hasn't found it now that he's fighting with Daisy about it, and it's brought up like turmoil in his life with Daisy now because he did that. So
One thing is, on page 16, it says, Daisy took her face in her hands as if feeling its lovely shape. And I think that kind of is implying that she's attractive. And that could mean that Tom just married her because she's attractive, and that, you know, obviously you're supposed to marry someone, not only just because they're attractive, but because of their personality. And so he probably didn't realize completely what he was getting himself into, and that they just weren't meant to be together.
I kind of thought about that too, because they're like sort of in a way polar opposites. She's very southern and he's very not southern, and he's rich and she's not, and I just like, I don't know, I feel like he didn't marry her for her, and I kind of felt like that too.
Going back to what Alex said, is kind of like how they viewed women, or he says,
Mm-hmm.
but how they viewed women back then, like, she didn't want a daughter because she knew, like, the life that she would have, and just kind of like, Tom just married her as, like, kind of a trophy, like, look what I have, kind of thing.
Okay, did you guys have any quotes that like you didn't understand that you want to like break down? Because I had one.
One, it's just real quick that I didn't
Okay.
really understand, is Nick says, instead of being the warm center of the world, the Middle West now seemed like the ragged edge of the universe. So I decided to go east and learned the bond business. And I didn't really understand that. I mean, maybe he explains it, but I didn't really understand how the Middle West seemed like a ragged edge of the universe.
I think it's talking about the Dust Bowl. Isn't that around this time period?
I think maybe, because I think this book takes place in the 20s.
What
Or it's like
page?
starting-
Early 20s.
3.
22.
yeah, so
Yeah,
this,
22.
yeah, that's when the Great Depression happened. Well, and when people like we first started expanding west, like everyone wanted to go west and head west because that was the place to go.
Yeah.
And once they all got out there, like that happened, and then that kind of like was where everyone was going, and then it just turned back to being like, you know, like dried out, and people didn't want to be there anymore. So to like find new, I guess, new lives, whatever, they were going back east and more north to try and figure that out. So I think that's kind of what he's talking about.
The bond business, I think that's stocks too, like the stock market.
Hang on, I had a quote. I'm gonna read it from the book though, and I had no idea what I meant. It was kind of weird. It said the only completely sanitary object in the room was an enormous couch on which two young women were buoyed up as though upon an anchored ballroom or balloon. Yeah, I had no idea what that meant, and I was really confused. If you guys want to read it, it's on 8, and it's in the second paragraph. But I really did not understand it. It was a lot of words.
Well, it's a stationary, which I thought you said sanitary, but
No,
I
it did
did-
say.
it's
I said
stationary.
stationary. Did I
You
not
said
say
sanitary.
stationary?
You said
Okay,
sanitary.
sorry guys, dyslexia. Keep going.
I mean,
Anyway.
granted, they are wearing all white and everything, so it probably does feel kind of sanitary as well.
Well-
I think,
Sorry.
well, because he was talking like the paragraph before,
Mm-hmm.
he was saying the windows were ajar, and which he says a breeze blew through the room, which
Yeah.
blew the curtains up in one end and the flags twisting them up towards the wedding cake, and then over the rug and making a shadow like across it. So I think what he was talking about here, I don't think it's just talking about like the couch and woman. Like, I think there's more to it, but like what he was saying here is that everything else in the room was like moving, except for that like one piece was still, and that's like kind of what we're supposed to focus on right there, and then like leads into points for that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I just think like sometimes throughout the book, he says things in a really complicated way that he could have avoided, like buoyed up as though upon an anchored balloon. Like Wow.
It just means they're like sitting there.
That was so unnecessary.
I mean, but that's kind of how they were starting to talk, and like
Mhm.
with him, like how he is, and like the way like he is. He's like rich and he's upper class, and usually they get the best education. And
Yeah,
that's kind of how
I
they
think
talk.
he's trying to show that Nick feels like he's like way smarter than everybody else, so he tries to use fancy words and stuff, like to kind of prop up his intelligence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the narrator saying that, though, not Nick.
Yeah,
is
Nick
it
is
Nick?
talking.
Nick is the
Yeah.
narrator.
Oh.
Plus, I just think that's Fitzgerald's form of writing. I think he just takes on that kind of elaborate descriptions of things. I think it's just one of his like things that distinguishes him from a lot of other people, even though it might not seem necessary. I think it's just how he writes.
One thing to consider too is, who are the two characters that he's describing right here too?
Daisy,
Yeah, Daisy and who else?
Devon. Oh,
Miss Baker.
yeah, that's what
Charlie.
Yeah. Jordan, so one thing that you can consider too, and something to take note of as we progress throughout the book, is Nick's initial descriptions of characters. This is something we'll discuss more on Monday, but that he's really careful about, okay, this is how he wants to introduce these two characters, so why would he go about describing them in this way?
Okay,
Something to consider.
to add on to that really quick, I think that when Nick is describing someone at the very beginning, that's like the way that you imagine them throughout the whole book. It's like the very beginning of what you see of this character, and I think that's really important and a very like smart way of describing a character.
I think this kind of goes back to what Logan was saying about her maybe being attractive. Because, well, when he's like, after he says that they were in white dresses, later he goes on to say, the younger of the two was stranger to me. And then he goes in and talks about how she was completely motionless and her chin raised, and she was balancing something, like, it was balancing on which was quite likely to fall. And I think that quote is kind of relating to Daisy and how she's like feeling right there, because she is kind of like a ticking time bomb anyways, because of like what she's going through with Tom and stuff. And when he like sees her, it kind of shows that she like let something off, because he can like notice that about her like immediately without even like have really met her. So
Right, yeah.
One of the quotes that confused me was on page 9, like towards the very bottom. Tom said, "This whole town is desolate. All the cars have the left rear wheel painted black as a mourning wreath, and there's a persistent wail at night all along the North Shore." I think he's talking about Chicago there, but I don't understand why they had that.
It's probably just like his personality right now, or like the way he feels. He's kind of like taking the way he feels and putting it into what he's saying. Just how like
Yeah.
sad he is.
I think that's Fitzgerald just elaborating on his pessimistic personality, because we even see on the page before, page 7, he keeps building up Tom as someone who's kind of like gruff and husky, like his speaking voice, a gruff, husky tenor. And then he talks about how he turns him by one arm, kind of being abrupt and all that. Fitzgerald kind of makes Nick paint Tom as a kind of mean character, I guess you could say, and a pessimistic character. So I think that's just building up off of that.
yeah, I think Logan's right, because when the paragraph 4 he says, I told her how before the quote you said, Alex, he says, I told her how I had stopped off in Chicago for a day on my way east, and how a dozen people had sent their love through me. And then she says, do they miss me? And then he's kind of being really elaborate and basically saying, and what he's saying means that, yeah, they really miss you, and they're really thinking, like, they're sad that you're not there. And I think he's just going really in depth about them.
No, he's
like,
being
missing you.
sarcastic a little bit too.
It's kind of like a joke, like a little treat.
And Cam, like you said earlier, how you said like you think Daisy's like a ticking time bomb. I really felt that vibe throughout the whole like first chapter, that she's really gonna go downhill throughout the rest of the book, and I'm not sure that she will because I don't remember and I've only seen the movie once. But I feel like she's just like gonna explode and do something that's really wrong, but I really don't know. I can't tell yet.
How about that for Tammy?